Pete Campbell is both the luckiest and the most luckless character in Mad Men. He is lucky in obvious senses of the term. He comes from a very wealthy and prestigious family. Yeah, he is a blue blood in the way that a lot of other characters in the show, all of them, honestly, are not. He is, in many ways, the epitome of privilege, but he is the epitome of privilege in a way that does not matter as much in the ruthlessly image-centric world of modern capitalism, where what matters most is the ability to project a certain kind of feeling, a certain kind of image, a certain kind of iconography. The show is about names, but it's also about how little names can mean. It is about the obsession with the image and the value of the image, and how one can become enthralled by the image. This image-centric world, this world of TV, of visuals, of iconography, is not a world that Pete succeeds in. It's not a world that he can prosper in spite of himself. And yet, that lack of success, that forces him to confront his own fallibility and his own frailty, is ultimately beneficial to him. It is worth discussing the ways in which Pete differs from someone like Roger Sterling. Roger also has had everything handed to him. Roger did not earn his position at the company. He inherited it. His father built the company with Cooper, and he simply benefits from the work of the prior generation. And yet, Roger, while he is also a tragic character to an extent, one who laments his incapacity to act, to define himself in the world by genuine and meaningful action, is nonetheless quite charming. He loves his quips. He handles himself like a real aristocrat, someone who does not take the world too seriously, who enjoys pleasure and entertainment, the finer and more luxurious aspects of life. There are moments wherein one wants to be Roger Sterling. There are very few moments wherein one wants to be Pete Campbell. The name of Sterling fundamentally matters in a way that Pete's pedigree does not. Pete does not benefit as much from his pedigree because his family did not want him to go into the advertising business. They view it as degrading for people of such high class. That's not to say Pete doesn't benefit from his privileged background. He absolutely does. The show admits as much in season 1. I believe it is Bert who points out that his family lineage is a big reason why he's there in the first place. And yet it does not offer him much there. His family is ridiculous, for one. There's nothing lavish. There's nothing beautifully grand about how Pete's family is portrayed. In quite the opposite way, actually. They're portrayed as being a mix of brutes, fools, and complete ingrates who have rather absurd things happen to them. The apex of this is when Pete's mother is taken advantage of by the team of Bob Benson and Manolo and ultimately thrown off a cruise ship by Manolo in order to gain financial money, to gain power in that regard. But this doesn't work because the family is already broke. They are the kind of aristocrats who have a name, but not a lot of money. They have increasingly little purchase in the modern consumerist world, which is less concerned with static names and more concerned with wealth and the pursuit of it. And above all, the image that wealth can bring you. That is ultimately what advertising is. It is the belief that there is this certain image that will bring you satisfaction, and you can get that if you are able to summon the financial wherewithal to buy a specific product. That is the promise of advertising, and it is an idea that the show continues coming back to. The show does not necessarily hate the advertising industry, and it takes that industry very seriously, but it does use that advertising industry as a way to critique the intensely image-centric, visual-centric nature of capitalist consumer society in mid-century America. Now, whether this change is good or bad is more ambivalent. The previous iteration of society was one much more focused on names and rank, background, heritage, which obviously has its drawbacks as well. And it is significantly less inclusive. There is much less of a degree of meritocracy to it. Pete fundamentally is let down by that change, in the sense that he is from a prestigious Northeastern family in a world where that increasingly matters less and less, where the sensuality of these enticing images sold to a burgeoning middle class matters much more than a fancy background. But in a way, Pete's exclusion from this image-centric world and his desperate, flailing, ultimately failed attempts to fit into it ultimately benefit him in some way, because the show is very negative about the spiritual hollowness of this image-centric society, how the pursuit of images can ultimately lead one to mere transient pleasures that do nothing to fill the yawning chasm of existential loneliness and despair that occupies the modern adrift individual. Don Draper is the perfect example of this ideology. He's very much an example of the limited value of names. His name is not even his name. He took the name of someone else to start a new life, and through a mix of charm, wit, and conniving, he has been able to attain wealth and status. Don is fundamentally held by the fact that he is handsome, he is good looking, he is charming. All of these are very important. Don is from a poor background. He's from an uneducated, uncultured background. He's a nobody, unlike Pete, but that doesn't matter as much as long as he can project a certain image. The image of this ideal modern, by modern I mean modern at the time, man, worldly, sophisticated, handsome, able to seduce almost any woman he wants. A bit like James Bond in a way, with an air of mystery and intrigue to him. Pete desperately wants to be cool. He wants to be Don. He wants that seemingly effortless grace, that ability to make everyone like and respect him. Pete can come across as very whiny at times, but he does genuinely work hard, especially in season 5, which I think is the most illuminating season for Pete's character. He is the one carrying the company while Don is meandering and obsessed with this fantasy of his perfect love life. And yet no one respects Pete because though he does the work, he does not have the finesse, the grace of someone like Don. He is a squirming lowlife, morally, oftentimes. But it's not like he is morally worse than a lot of these characters in the show. He just does not have the ability to pull off suave, elegant, fashionable cool. He's not the affable, dissipated, aristocratic type like Sterling. He's not the commanding, cool, creative, intellectual type like Draper. He has many, many infidelities, but they're a bit different from Don's or Roger's in that there's something really pathetic about them. He comes across badly not because what he's doing is morally wrong. It is, but not more so than what a lot of the other characters are doing, but because he's just not as good at it. He makes himself look like a loser, and he doesn't know how not to do that. He's the kind of person who has an affair or tries to have an affair with a high school girl in his driving class, or a woman who is receiving shock therapy. And he coerces some foreign immigrant nanny into sexual activity. All of these are not just immoral, they're immoral in a flailing, pathetic, skin-crawling kind of way. Pete fundamentally fails because he does not fare well in this image-centric society. He cannot make being amoral and lust-driven look cool in the same way that Don can. That is bad for him, but it's also good because it allows him to see the fundamental hollowness of his actions. He is vividly confronted with his own pathetic nature and is thus able to prevent himself from destroying the foundation he has in his familial life. Yes, Trudy is extraordinarily generous to take him back, but Pete is smart enough and he has grown enough by the end of the show to understand what he has with Trudy and his family, and to understand that this imperfect, somewhat unfashionable, but real and beautiful life that he has is worth valuing over chasing this unattainable cool of Don Draper. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this one before anyone else. Keep watching Mad Men. It's a great show. And if you want me to talk about another character, just say so in the comments. I'll check them out. Thank you all. Adios, comrades.